Well, welcome to Community Crossfire and another point of view. This is John Flaherty sitting in for the capable Julius Cephas. We got a panel discussion tonight on sickle cell diseases, and it's going to be a good show. Why don't we just go around or have our panels introduce themselves, and we'll start with you, Doctor.
Well, I'm Dr. Nina Anderson. I'm the Executive Director of TOVA Community Health Sickle Cell Specialty Treatment Center in Wilmington, Delaware.
Hello, my name is Leslie Evans Johnson, and I have sickle cell disease.
Hi, I'm Hadassah Futrell, and I also have sickle cell disease.
Well, thank you all for coming out tonight. Why don't we begin, Dr. Anderson, with you and talk a little bit about yourself. I understand you have quite an accomplished athletic and musical career. So.
Well, thank you. For all of you who don't know, I was raised and was born in Wilmington. I grew up on 29th and Harrison Street near Haynes Park, and graduated from the public schools. And my mother was a nurse, and when she retired from there, she went to work as a custodian for the Red Clay School District. My father was an educator, a teacher, and then he was also a longshoreman. So one of the things that my parents really push is that once you get your education, you always come back and help the community in whatever need it is. And through that, my father was a great tenor, baritone tenor singer, so he wanted all of us to play a musical instrument, and I chose to play the violin. And my father was also an accomplished track runner. He was held the record for almost 30 years in the 800-meter dash, or it was a yard, at University of Delaware. And he also ran on the 4x4 relay team for Howard High School that were on the Penn relays when he was there. So all of us also had to play a sport.
Well, that's great. Well, I grew up on 26th Street, so we're like 3 blocks away. 26th and Harrison.
Okay,
there, so.
You probably seen me when I was little running around down at the park.
Yeah, I was a dynamiter, so I used to walk up to school.
Okay.
They call us dynamiter. How about yourself, ma'am?
I grew up in Wilmington. I'm also a dynamiter.
Oh, no kidding.
Yes.
Well, I was class of 68.
Okay, I'm not going to say what. No, I was class of 76.
You're one of the young pups.
Yeah. But I grew up in Wilmington, Delaware. I too, was introduced to music early. I played the flute and the piano. I was in high school band, college band for a couple of years, and played the flute there, and was in many piano recitals that we had. I am now an educator. I teach kindergarten and love teaching.
How about that? I remember my kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Winthrop.
Oh, wow.
I don't remember a whole lot about it, but it was a very positive experience. I was at Highlands School.
Highlands?
Yeah, it was the first year they opened it up.
Okay.
1955. So.
Wow.
And where do you teach?
Kaumba Charter School.
Okay. That's on Market Street?
No, it was on Market Street, but it's now on Orange Street.
Okay. That's great. And you, ma'am?
What do you want to know?
Anything you'd like to share with our viewers here?
Not much. Okay. Well, once again, I was born in Delaware, but I grew up in Georgia, from grade school to halfway through college, and not much about it. I also did play flute as well, as we were talking earlier. So I was in middle school band. Started in high school, but finished through that because I didn't too sick to do it. But I enjoy music. Is fun, It's like I think an instrument just makes you kind of opens up something about students, or my teachers were able to touch me through music. Put it that way. So even if you don't actually play an instrument, it's fun. I just love music. Music is.
Yeah, I never played instruments, but one of my favorite movies is that. It's Battle of the Bands at one of the black colleges. I forget the name of the movie, but it was an incredible movie. I mean, really, it was good.
Yeah,
Drumline. I mean, I've seen that a couple times. It really is a fascinating movie, and the competition for positions and everything, and how the alumni puts pressure on people.
Right.
Dr. Anderson, how did you get involved with medicine? I mean, you're head of the TOVA healthcare system, which mainly treats sickle cell diseases, but tell us, our viewers, about how you became a nurse and how you chose this path in life to help people.
Well, as I said, my mother was a nurse at the old Wilmington Hospital for years, and I actually wanted to be a veterinarian, but wasn't sure that I could get into veterinarian school. So I decided to go to University of Delaware, enroll in the nursing program, and found that there was opportunities at the time to expand the role of a nurse as an advanced practice nurse. And my great-grandmother was one of the first African-American advanced practice nurses, and she practiced at the Emily Bissell Hospital and took care of African-American patients that were unable to get into the hospital, so they were treated in tents. So I said, wow, I mean, that would be something where I could go in an area that's expanding and really make a difference. And so I chose that career path. And then once I graduated, I worked at A.I. DuPont Hospital. I worked with children with cancer and blood diseases.
Did you work in Philadelphia too,
No,
didn't you?
yes, I did,
Yes.
yeah. So I was there for 5 years, and then once I received my master's, there was an opportunity to work at a comprehensive sickle cell center that there was one of 10 centers that received funding from the National Institute of Health, and they were really trying to transform and advance treatment options at the time for children. And I saw that as a great opportunity to work with one of the renowned hematologists that was specializing in the area of sickle cell, as well as bloodless medicine, blood conservation medicine. And it was a great opportunity, and I worked there for 8 years and then decided to come back to Delaware.
Why don't you tell our viewers exactly what is sickle cell, what are the sickle cell diseases, and what are the symptoms, and why is it important to treat it?
So sickle cell disease is an inherited blood disorder where the blood cells are misshapen, like in the shape of a C or a crescent. And
Normally they're like round, like a
nice
donut?
and round, yes.
Okay.
And under certain conditions and stressors, those blood cells break down, they change shape, and they include oxygen and nutrients to flow through the blood vessels and to the organs, and it causes excruciating pain. And as an adult, and I will refer to Leslie and Hadassah, some of our patients, at least about 30%, live with chronic pain every day, and other complications from not getting enough circulation to the vessels and the tissues is it can cause organ damage. But I think, having Leslie and Hadassah talk about that would be probably more imperative because they live with this every day.
Sure.
And it impacts them.
Now, Leslie, you have sickle cell disease?
Yes, I do.
Why don't you tell our viewers out there how you first became aware that you had this and what you did and what are the symptoms and everything?
Okay, I was diagnosed at age 5, and my parents didn't know, what was going on with me because it seemed like every time something stressful was going on, something would happen to me. I would, cry, with pain. So they took me to several doctors, and at that time, that was the late 50s, early 60s. At that time, it was the early 60s, right? They didn't know much about sickle cell, so my parents took me to several doctors in Baltimore and in Philadelphia, and then found out that I think it was my grandmother. My grandmother said, maybe she has what Carl has. Carl's my cousin who also has sickle cell. And said maybe she has what Carl has. So we went to the doctor where Carl was going, and I can't remember what doctor that was, but anyway, they took me there, and they did many tests and found out that it was sickle cell. So that was age 5 when they finally diagnosed me. All these things were going on prior to age 5, but they did diagnose at age 5, and from then, my mother sought doctors down here for me to deal with the disease, and she went to many doctors to find out what to do. They actually formed a group here in Wilmington, some of the parents of children that had sickle cell, so that they could find out more information and what to do for children like myself. Growing up, it was very difficult because when you're a child, you want to do everything that everyone else is doing. So that didn't happen for me. I had to do it a different way, or I had to take many precautions to do it. Like I mentioned, I played in the band. I wanted to be a majorette, but because cold affects people with sickle cell, I said, well, I'll go another avenue just to be a part of. So I got interested in playing the flute, and that's how I became a part of the band. As far as an adult living with sickle cell, it's very, very difficult because, as I was saying earlier, I'm a teacher, and to hold a job is really, really difficult for an adult because many times you're absent. You know, the pain will not allow you to even get out of bed. You can wake up in the morning and you're feeling fine. Maybe a half hour to an hour later, pain hits you, and it's excruciating pain where you can't deal with anything. So you have to put yourself back in the bed, or you have to go hydrate yourself and take your pain medication. So, you know, an employer doesn't want to hear, "I'm not feeling good today." You know, and
They just want you to show up.
they
and-
want you to
yeah.
show up no matter what. And so, of course, you know, if you're in excruciating pain, you cannot show up. So, you know, that takes a toll on an adult with sickle cell because it's hard for them to keep a job. I was one of the fortunate ones, you know, to be able to hold a job. So, like right now, I'm on medical leave. Right now, medical, not leave, but sort of, yeah, disability, and you know, because of the pain that I'm having now.
And you mentioned as a child that cold would bring on the pain. Was there anything else that would trigger this?
Oh yes.
Was there emotional or like
Stress,
family
is-
events?
Oh yes, stress is definitely one of the triggers. You know, something happens within your family, you know, that will upset you. That's definite. That, you know, it's going to affect you physically. You know, you're going to get sick from that. So, stress is one of the triggers. What else, Adasa?
Dehydration,
Dehydration.
infection.
Okay. And for the benefit of our viewers,
Overexertion, yeah.
what could you describe the pain you had when you were 5 years old? For the benefit
When
of
I was a child, I can't explain. It just always hurt. No I mean, the only thing that would help was if my mother and father, they would take turns. Most of my pain was usually in my leg or my back. So my mother would sleep while my father rubbed my leg because they both had jobs. Then when my father went to sleep, then my mother would come and she would rub my leg, or they would just hold me, just to rub me, or make sure I had the liquids that I needed. So as a child, you can't describe it. It's just, it's horrible.
Yeah.
Excruciating. It's horrible. It's horrible.
Now, Adasa, how about you? You're a nurse. Do you have sickle cell yourself, or?
No, I'm not a nurse. I have the sickle cell disease. My parents found out with me when I was 6 months. My mom was an educator, and she had a bachelor in science, something like that. I can't remember. But she was studying to become a doctor, and the second she had me and my younger brother who had it, he just recently passed from it, but he had it worse than I did with complications. She stopped her whole career and focused straight on taking care of us, making sure we were well, healthy, just going doctor to doctors, whatever. So they found me at 6 months. She just said, from the stories I know, it's just because I was fussy and they didn't know what it was. So I'm an 80s baby, so they didn't, by law, it wasn't really put into law for them to test for us, I think, yet. So when they found out with me, my brother was automatically they found out he had it. He was clinically dead at 5 months. So at 6 months, they found out with me. Through sad meningitis at 4. I was going through just several pain crises. Mom didn't know what was going on, pneumonia. She just complications going on. I grew up. She took us to Georgia. She left here because the doctors here were in Delaware, just weren't working with my mother, and my father. So she took us to Scottish Rite in Georgia. They were amazing with us. Took great care of us. Fast forward to about age 18, around there, 16, 17, 18, around there. We leave Children's Hospital, and there's a space in life where I think, from a lot of stories I hear from friends and other people, it's a space where you're kind of like left alone as a sickle cell patient, because you're going, on the outside, you look at us and we look fine. The inside is a whole nother world. So it's like you're going to doctors and saying, I need pain medication, or I'm in pain, or something's not right. You're in the hospital all the time. And it just was that space and time where no one was having care for you or we didn't know exactly where to go. My story was I was left completely by myself. The only thing that saved me was my mom was very hands-on. She was a huge advocate for sickle cell. She made sure that I was taken care of. She made sure my brother was taken care of. My grandmother was behind me. So it was like my family really kind of just, marched behind me and said, we got to find you. So my story kind of led into John Hopkins. I was about maybe early 20s. So I found a doctor there, and that's how I got to deal with TOVA care. But her name is Dr. Lance Grom, but the adult sickle cell for medication there for the sickle cell disease there, amazing. When I say amazing care, amazing care. What took doctors somewhere else necessarily, I would say weeks or if not months to diagnose me with certain things, she found out in 20 minutes. For my cases where I'm on a medication called hydroxyurea, it works well for me, may not for somebody else. So I've been there for about 15 years, like I said, fast forward, and they led me into dealing with TOVA. But as Leslie was saying, as an adult with sickle cell, same thing. When it comes to work, it's like, how do you look an employer in the face and say, I'm great, I'm very intelligent, I can work, but my body's not going to keep up. So just hold my job. That's not going to happen. That's just not how it works. Thankfully, some people can work. That's not always the case for everybody, but it's just very difficult. In my case, so I couldn't do that. I would work on and off, and then I would have problems. But my mom had gotten to the point where she had said, you're not working anymore because it's killing you physically. And when I finally just started focusing on health, I got a little healthier. So you can't describe the pain. People ask that all the time. What does it feel like? I mean, I kind of just give the best I can, but it's a pain that you can't touch. It's like you can try to rub it, heat, and what works for some patients may not work for the other, but like Leslie was saying, heat may help. Hot, cold triggers us in a second. For me, it's cold, in a very split second. And it's a day-to-day thing. You can wake up like she said, you can wake up in the morning, be just fine. Not even 30 minutes later, you can literally just get up, go to the bathroom, brush your teeth, and you're killed over pain wherever it might be. For mine, I always was in my back. Growing up, it was in limbs, but for me, it's in my back. So it just depends on the person, but you can't explain, like I said, because like with any disease or any illness, you want to call out. Sometimes it's not on the outside you see. It makes it difficult. Sometimes they diagnose us through the eyes, through skin or jaundice, but I mean, it branches off into other problems. Like my brother had 40-some seizures, 30-some strokes. He just died recently of cardiac arrest from sickle cell crisis. So I mean, it branches off into so many different things that because your body is needing that nutrient and oxygen from the cells and you're not getting it, and our cells are dying so quickly. So on the outside we look great, we can live decent lives if we have the correct care, but that's not for everybody.
So it's like on the outside you're all right, but on the inside there's a war going on.
Right.
So you were diagnosed at 5 years
Yes.
old, and you were diagnosed at 6 months. Is that a blood test that diagnosed it, or
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
I believe
Yes,
so.
so the newborn screening program didn't start till the early 90s in 48 states. So all babies are tested for sickle cell disease and other inherited genetic disorders. But the test to diagnose someone with sickle cell, a blood test is a hemoglobin electrophoresis. My assumption is that's what they had done. But again, they found out little later in life, and that was based on their symptoms they were having and the healthcare providers trying to figure out what was going on.
Right. Now, for the benefit of our viewers, sickle cell diseases are when the red blood cells change and they become like a sickle shaped, and they literally clog up your capillaries and your arteries. And normally the round red blood cells would move, and these kind of just they stick to your side, and they probably are the cause of pain.
Exactly.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And they look fine from the outside. You look at them, but that doesn't mean that they're not coping with pain or there's not sickling going on inside, as even they say here today.
So today, for the last 20 years, we have babies are screened for this when they're born.
Yes, that's correct.
And does Delaware do that?
Yes.
And how many babies did we catch with this disease now?
I think there's probably between 15 and 20 babies born with sickle cell in the state of Delaware, and probably close to 300 that have the sickle cell trait. And we know that 1 in 10 African Americans carry the sickle cell trait. And when 2 parents have the trait, there is a chance that they can have a child with sickle cell disease.
So if two parents both have that gene, then their child will automatically get it, or 50%,
It's
you
a
think?
50% chance. Yes, that's
Okay,
correct.
and if one parent has the gene, the other parent doesn't, then they have 4 kids, there's maybe 1 in 4 that one of the children's going
And
to get it.
each pregnancy carries the same risk.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like you have 4 kids and one has it and the other one doesn't. It's every time you have a child, those chances stay the same.
Okay, well, is there what can you do for sickle cell disease? What are the remedies or the medications you can take to alleviate the pain and the suffering?
Well, as they were just talking, there's very few options that we have had over the last century to treat patients who are having crisis, hydrating them, giving them blood transfusions, oxygen if they need it, and pain medications. And hydroxyurea was approved by the FDA probably in the early 90s. And that's a disease-modifying therapy that helps increase fetal hemoglobin levels and decrease sickling in the blood cells. Hydoxa is a person that is on that medication and doing very well. And just recently, the FDA approved a new drug called Indari, which is a protein supplement that helps reduce the oxidative stress within the red blood cell. So, sickle cell is a rare disorder, one that doesn't oftentimes get the resources as other chronic conditions. So we really don't have a lot of treatment options available, and that has changed. But as I said before, if you're dealing with pain, we really don't have another arsenal to treat it. And so that's one of the things that we're challenged with as healthcare providers.
Okay, in addition to the pain they experience, it's my understanding that the sickle cells only last 10 to 15 days.
That's
so
correct.
The regular donut-shaped cells last, 90 days?
120.
120, so they're constantly losing their cells, and it must be exhausting having this lack of oxygen.
Right.
I guess
yes.
that's what the anemia comes
Right,
from, right? Yeah.
and both Leslie has SC and Hadassah has SS, and their baseline hemoglobins are different. I know them because they're my patients. Leslie runs hemoglobin between 10 and 11, and a normal hemoglobin in a woman is between 12 and probably 14. And Hadassah's baseline off of hydroxyurea is probably a 7 and 8. On hydroxyurea therapy, we have her at a 9. So even just a bump in 2 grams with the medication has made a significant difference in her quality of life. But they live at a low hemoglobin every day.
Now, you started Tovo Health Care, right?
Yes.
And what inspired you to do that, and exactly what do you do there at Tovo Health Care?
So as I said, I actually had a passion of working with this community because there was no resources and very little. And I said, hey, I can have this great career in oncology and make all this money, or I can work in an area where there's not enough resources and learn as much as I can to make a difference in our community. And as I said, when I was at St. Christopher's Hospital, the Marion Comprehensive Center, we really were able to get 350 families on new treatments. We actually started the baby hug study at St. Chris, and we enrolled a couple babies on hydroxyurea. Now it's standard of care for all children. And we also did studies with magnesium, looking at that nitric oxide and seeing what that could do to help with the to reduce sickle cell complications. But the really need, and pediatric care is great. They have lots of resources. There's 4 times more resources available to treat children than adults. The really need is to how do you bridge that gap of care as the children leave out of the pediatric centers and become adults. And so I decided to look at an opportunity to build an alternative care model that would meet the needs of adults, knowing that there would be challenges and it would be resource that there's not a lot of providers that want to work in this area because the reimbursement rates are low. And then how do you do that and create a model where they get comprehensive coordinated care?
So if you're a child, you have a lot of options for getting sickle cell treatment, but as you age out over 18,
Yes.
it's far limited.
Right.
So if you're an adult and you think you might have sickle cell disease, how do you go about it? contact your doctor or
Yes,
Tova Healthcare?
yeah, you definitely want to get tested just to make sure to see if it is sickle cell. And frankly, it was interesting. I had it diagnosed some adults with sickle cell in their 30s, and they just had all of those symptoms like achiness and not, certain conditions. They would just get sick, and nobody really knew what it was. And finally, I was like, well, maybe you should be tested for sickle cell. And come to find out, a couple of them had it. So, newborn screening didn't start to the 90s, and there are people that, that have it and living with it and don't know it. And also with our immigration, as people are coming from other countries that don't have newborn screening testing available, those are the people that may have it and not know it as well. So there's tests that we do for that, and you want to make sure that you have a specialist to read it, so that there's other types of traits and hemoglobinopathies that aren't missed.
Now, a lot of the medication is new. Has it been helpful for you to the medication that you're on compared to 20 years ago, say?
I would say it is more helpful than 20 years ago. It still, when I take my medications, it still leaves me in the feeling of just being tired all the time. So, the medicine I'm taking now, I have to just go to sleep. There's nothing else I can do. So, for instance, if I'm thinking I'm going to get up and fix dinner, that's not going to happen because I'm taking the medication. All that's going to work for me is going to sleep, and putting a heating pad on with the area that's bothering me, and getting the rest. Now I can have my family, they work with me very well. My family is very supportive, and they know. Some of my family members can tell when I'm going to get sick, and like my mom, she knows right away if she looks at me. She just knows.
She knows.
She knows.
How about that?
And so I get myself together, and I start resting. If I'm doing too much, that means I need to go rest. Take the mild medication, because I have 2 different medications that I take for the pain. So I'll take the mild medication and rest for a while, and then maybe it will not get as severe.
And Adasa, how about yourself? Is the medication you're taking, is it helpful, say, from 20 years ago? Or?
Yeah, so that's very helpful. When Hydrea first came out, my mom had, when she first heard about it, late 80s, early 90s, she had jumped on it, but it wasn't fully into practice yet or being used on patients yet. So when she found out about it, it had finally been practiced on it and ready for patients, she pushed me through the front door with the bulldozer. So it's very helpful. I mean, I've seen a different quality in life. The jaundice has kind of cleared up. My energy's a little bit better, and thankfully, not like I said, not everybody, but thankfully in my case, I have doctors who are understanding of the crisis every day or dealing with pain every day, and that you have a chronic pain, a chronic illness that you have to deal with on a daily basis. So the pain medication helps. Each therapy is different for each patient, but it's like Leslie was saying, it makes you, you're just tired. All you can do is sometimes it's just sleep. That's all you can do.
Makes you very lethargic.
You're very lethargic, right.
Dr. Anderson, what are the medications that someone could take if they were diagnosed with sickle cell disease? There's probably a medication for the sickle cell and maybe medication for the anemia part. So what are the various medicines that you can take?
Like I was saying, for years we're just treating symptoms. So if they're in crisis, we would give them pain medications, fluids. If their blood count dropped below their baseline and they were symptomatic, we would transfuse them. Or if they've had a stroke, put them on a chronic transfusion program. And as Hadassah said, hydroxyurea came on the scene in the 90s, and that really helped to decrease the amount of pain and the hospitalizations that persons were having with sickle cell. And then Indari, this new protein supplement that just came out. So we really haven't had a lot.
Okay.
Yes.
Hold that thought. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to continue our discussion about sickle cell diseases and the causes and cures. So stay with us. We'll be back in a few. Welcome back to Community Crossfire and Another Point of View. I'm John Flaherty, sitting in for Julia Cephas tonight. We're had a very lively discussion about sickle cell diseases. And before the break, we were talking with Dr. Anderson. And Doctor, where did this disease come from? I mean, is it mainly from tropical climates? Who is most susceptible to this?
So I always say that sickle cell disease, it has nothing to do with race. It has to do with a population of people trying to survive the epidemic of malaria. And those whose cells were shaped in such a way where the malaria parasite couldn't replicate, lived on and passed those genes. So you see it in tropical regions of the world, but also Mediterranean areas, South America, the Caribbean. But as people migrated out of Africa and came out of Africa to the United States, it can affect any ethnicity.
So you think, was sickle cell like a natural progression as an antidote against malaria in some cases?
Yes, exactly. Yes, that's correct. So I always say that it has such a stigma to it, but actually those who have the disease and have the trait are actually, it's a protective mechanism that Mother Nature was trying to do, so that malaria kills what 100,000,
Hundreds of
thousands of people
a year,
every year, and those who had the sickle gene were able to survive.
Yeah, I was looking at one of the maps here, and it basically had Africa, India, parts of Asia, and the Mediterranean regions.
That's
wherever you had malaria. And it's not unusual, but there you have a disease helping to stop another disease. But even still, I was reading 114,000 people died last year from sickle cell diseases.
Yes.
Really, are there any cures? Is there any hope for a cure
Yes.
for sickle? Why don't you talk about that?
Yes. So actually, there's a cure of bone marrow transplant, but you have to have a donor that
Like a
is
brother or sister?
yes, the full sibling that is a good match for that. As well as recently they're doing some stem cell transplants, and that's also been successful. And at Johns Hopkins, they're doing haplotype transplants where you don't have to be an exact match, so that could be a sibling or a parent that carries the trait for a person that has sickle cell. And 14 persons have gone through the haplotype transplant, and they've had a 60% cure rate.
Well, so there's hope for a cure down the road as
Absolutely.
more research is done.
Yeah, we want a universal cure.
Now, when you talk about stem cell transplants, are there any downsides to stem, any dangers to stem cell? Or?
With any transplant, there's always risk because you're either being exposed to chemotherapy and radiation to ablate all of the cells, and when you don't have enough white cells and defense mechanisms, that's always a risk. And then there's other complications that you can develop, like graft versus host disease. So it is a risky procedure, but for those who are able to go through it and it's successful, it can really change their quality of life.
Well, that's very positive that maybe some point in time in the future we'll have a cure where you can get rid of this insidious disease.
Yes.
I know a friend of mine had multiple myeloma, and she had a stem cell transplant. It didn't click in her case, but it did provide hope for a period of time. And any kind of surgical procedure like that is risky, but when you're sick like that, it's worth the risk and everything.
Yeah, and then there's also some studies going on with gene therapy as well.
Okay.
Yes, since it's a single gene mutation, there's a thought that you can just take that gene out and insert it with a good gene, and then transplant it back into the patient. So the gene that makes the cell sickle-shaped can be replaced by a cell that keeps them donut-shaped, I guess. Exactly.
Is what they call it. Yeah. So, well, that's really fascinating to know that. Now, locally, I want to make sure we cover this before we run out of time, but you have an event coming up on September 30th?
Yes.
Talk about that.
Yes, so September is National Sickle Cell Awareness Month.
Okay.
And this is our 6th year doing this. We host a 5K run and a 1-mile walk at the Brandywine Park near the zoo. And it's a dedication to one of my patients who passed away from sickle cell. James Fawcett actually started with the program with me, and he was very emphatic that we needed to do something in the community to increase the awareness and that we needed to give a face for sickle cell. And we've been very fortunate enough, even with resources and funding not being so optimal, to have as many people come out to the community and to be able to have families participate and really just have a great time. My goal is always for other patients to meet people with sickle cell, to give a face to that and know that the work that we're doing in the community for those who
I
are
guess it helps
affected
to
or
know
have
that
the
there's
trait.
other people who also are afflicted, and
Exactly.
it helps to have, you know, talking to people and forming bonds with
Yes.
fellow patients
That's
like
correct. That's correct.
that. And so this will be September 30th,
Yes.
and if somebody wanted to participate in this event, how would they go about doing that?
Yes, you can go to www.races2run.com, or you could give us a call at 888-433-4219.
Where if you're coming up 4th Street at Jackson, there's a billboard there with
Yes,
that information
yes,
right
yeah,
on. I just saw that
exactly.
tonight.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the funding for a cure. What kind of funding is available? Is there federal funding out there, or is there any state or local
Right.
funding?
Well, in the past, a lot of it's been more federal, and in the rare disease pool, there's been resources available for small biotechnologies to get into that space. But recently, Pfizer Pharmaceutical took I think it was a small biotech company, and took their research and development for a drug that's now called rivipansel. And it's in a phase 3 clinical trial, which actually is going to help to reduce sickling and hemolysis in the blood cells for people with sickle cell, and hope that we can use less opioids to treat crisis down the future. And I'm a consultant on that project for Pfizer. And so this is the first time in history that a multi-billion-dollar pharmaceutical company has taken an investment in sickle cell disease. I think it's phenomenal. And one thing I think is great is that the doctors that I worked with at St. Christopher's Hospital are actually on the front line coordinating that effort. But I also want to say that one of the challenges across the country, and I'm on called the Council for Change, is that we just don't have enough hematologists that want to subspecialize in the area of treating patients with sickle cell, and adults the need is just much greater. And so they're actually looking at my model, which uses telemedicine and telehealth to connect with bigger academic centers that have the resources in which to treat patients, that have access to clinical trials, and see if we can plant this type of model in places down in the South where they don't have the resources, and people live in these remote rural areas of the country. They can't drive 3 hours to get to an academic urban hospital. And so to say that there's been more investment into sickle cell than there ever has been, and I think that down the line you're going to see a more of a pipeline of drugs that will become available to treat.
Yeah, I guess there's so many different diseases competing for a limited amount of dollars, and you need to have a greater awareness to be able to obtain these kind of funds needed to look for a cure.
That's correct.
So, well, you two both have sickle cell diseases, and how do you, when you look, say, 10 years down the road, what do you hope that 10 years will bring you as far as your diseases, as far as the medicine to treat you?
Well, obviously a cure. That's what we're looking at. That's the positive part that we're looking at. I guess more, as Dr. Nina just said, to get rid of the opioids that are prescribed now.
Opioids are painkillers, and they don't really treat the sickle cell directly. It's the pain that they cause, right? Yeah.
So that's what I see down 10 years down.
How about you, Hadassah?
Same, equal. Hopefully a cure. I mean, you want to say it's so far off, but hopefully you can always put a hope there. And also just, I guess personally, just to have a better quality of life. Like I said, it's a daily, with any illness, and you don't want to single anyone, but with this illness, it's a daily fight. So hopefully a lot better quality of life, hopefully.
Okay,
and
great.
especially for children as they have more time frame in life to be able to hopefully find better cures and treatments down the road.
Are there any hospitals here locally? Are they helping out with does the Nemours Clinic help with sickle cell disease patients?
Yes, they have a comprehensive pediatric program.
Okay.
I know that Christiana has lots of hematologists that take care of patients, but always my emphasis is that they have to have the expertise and a passion to work with this patient population. It is such a complex medical condition that just to be a board certified hematologist is just not enough. And so when I started my program, I partnered with Johns Hopkins because I didn't want to invent the wheel, and I wanted to go to a place where if it was my loved one, I would send them.
And what inspired you to form this Tovo Health?
The need for adults to get better care. And as
Okay.
I was saying, when I was working at the Children's Hospital in Philadelphia, when I transitioned my patients, and I published a study recently in the American Journal of Hematology, which we looked at all of my patients that I transitioned to adult care over 10 years, and we found that we had about a 22% morbidity and mortality rate within 10 years after the transition. So it means that I've lost 22% of my patients from complications of sickle cell disease. And to me, that's just not acceptable. And I hate to get that kind of call from a parent that I took care of them as a child to say that they're not here and to pass away so young. And so my goal is to really make sure that we bridge that gap, that they have comprehensive coordinated care, and that we have resources available, and we also work with other bigger institutions that can give them more options for clinical trials and treatments that are cutting edge, than whether to wait. And Hadassah, I just want to say thank you because she participated in the Adari clinical trial, and she was one of the ones that didn't know if she was getting the drug or the placebo, but because of her efforts, we have a new treatment option. So we need more patients to participate in clinical trials to help us get these new drugs into market. And Hadassah was one of the ones that did that.
Good. Now, do you provide direct patient care yourself, or do you refer them to other facilities, or how does that work?
I provide direct patient care. As I said, at Wilmington. Yes, and then I work with other hematologists and physicians to help manage the patients, social workers as well, and community health educators.
Good. And how many patients are you currently
We
involved
have
with?
about 45 active patients,
Okay.
and we want to try to expand that and to take care of as many as we can, but it's just that people don't know about our program. And we're trying to get it out there. So if they want a different way, a different model of care that's more comprehensive and holistic, to give us a try.
Great. And if you wanted to contact Tovo, is there you have a website or?
Yes, you can go to www.tovacommunityhealth.org.
And also on September 30th, you can come out and run. Will you be
Yes.
running yourself?
Over the years I did, but this year I'll probably walk. I'm not in that kind of
How
shape.
about Julie? Is she going to be running? Or?
I don't think, probably walk as I might. But the other thing is it's very important. I just don't my area is chronic, other areas of expertise, but I really am a health guru, and I love to run. As like I said, I was on the track team, so having our community get out and participate in an event that's going to help them get exercise and focus on health and wellness is important to me. So I also participate every year, so it's fun.
Great. Well, we have a few minutes left. Hadassah, will you want to, anything you'd like to share with our viewers out there that you haven't talked about yet, or anything you'd like to share with somebody who may be just going through a diagnosis of sickle cell disease?
Like with anything, just hang in there. Just sometimes, like I said, with my personal case, I just gave up.
You gave up?
Transitional care, right? So between the pediatrician or child care to adult care, just hang in there. Sometimes it takes yourself just pushing yourself, or someone else doing it for you, and give total.
And what gave you hope to continue on? What?
It was really my family at the time, but honestly, it was finding, which I didn't meet Nina first, but going to Hopkins, and they just knew that I was going through something. You could see it in just you could see the wear on me. And like I said, what took doctors somewhere else years to get me on, for example, Hydrea, took them 20 minutes to look at me and say, why aren't you on it? So that, and to kind of just say, and then when it got worse and I would have pain, they would say, let's treat your symptoms. If we can't figure anything else out, and make you happy. So just hang in there. That's what my best
Okay, it
advice.
looks like we have about 2 minutes left. How about yourself? What would you like to share with our listeners before we leave tonight?
If you feel that you are not getting the proper care, find a good health care provider. I'm saying Tova Healthcare because that's exactly what has helped me, you know, to maintain my medications, to my total health, you know. So I encourage you to find a good health care provider, and also come out on September 30th. Team Leslie is challenging all of you.
And how about you, Dr. Anderson? What would you like to share with our viewers about sickle cell or TOVA or anything else?
I would say that I'm very honored to be the 2017 Small Woman-Owned Business of the Year for the state of
Oh, great.
Delaware, and that they recognize the work and the service delivery model that I provide for adults with sickle cell, to say that that's very promising and hoping to be able to continue the work.
Well, great. It's been a wonderful discussion. I felt honored to be on the same platform as you and your many. Also you're with the Umojos.
Yes.
What's it called? The
Umoja Strings Quartet.
Stringers. That's
Yes.
amazing. So, well, I want to thank everybody for watching tonight's Community Crossfire, Another Point of View. I want to thank our two guests and wish you the best of luck with your medical diagnosis in the future. And Dr. Anderson, thank you very much for being such a good and kind doctor and treating all those folks out there.
Thank you.
And good luck in that September 30th fundraiser awareness campaign. So,
Thank you.
on behalf of Julia Cephas, I want to thank you all for tuning in tonight. And that ends tonight's version of Community Crossfire and Another Point of View. I'm Ed McMahon. I'm John Flaherty, signing off.